Alright everyone, it's time for today's second video. Now first and foremost, and this obviously gets me some dislikes because of the religious composition of my audience mainly, to be clear, I believe in the right to choose. That being said, I'm seeing a lot of goofy stuff from the legacy media at this point, really hyperbolic with regards to Roe v. Wade. This is in relation to the potential Dobbs decision. We might be getting that basically any time. The Supreme Court of the United States has several paths forward in deciding this case. They appear in their verbal arguments to lean towards getting rid of Roe v. Wade. While I don't think that's politically pragmatic, while I think that it could be harmful to people who want to hold the Dems accountable during the midterms, although it's not 100% clear, there's the risk of that. It could be the Republicans snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. They're very good at doing that, by the way. As a non-Republican, I sit there surprised every time that they manage to surprise me with stupidity. But that being said, let's say that that scenario occurs. Roe v. Wade is tossed by the Supreme Court, and there's probably a better than 50-50 chance they go with that hardline solution. Does this mean abortion is illegal? No. No, not fundamentally. There are a handful of states that have blue laws that make it fundamentally illegal. It is unlikely that the federal court system would not immediately injunct such attempts, giving time for the legislature to act. And by the way, I do believe that a significant proportion of Republicans, especially those that are from the more swing state areas of the country, would immediately sign on to legislation fundamentally legalizing abortion. What would happen is that the Mississippi limit would become the new arbitrary point. It wouldn't be like generally 20 weeks, it'd be 15. Well, it's still legal. It doesn't impugn upon... The thing is, the court has to decide whether, in the presence of Roe v. Wade, the Mississippi law specifically is an undue burden on women in attaining abortion. The problem is that the majority of women by then would know that they were pregnant, so it's hard to make that legal argument, which is why Roe may fall. Or they might simply say, well, no, the Mississippi law is fine. Roe v. Wade is fine. The basic premise, we're upholding it. However, Mississippi is not violating Roe v. Wade with their law, so that they can continue doing that. That'd be the more soft line approach, and that's, again, the chances of them not siding with Mississippi are virtually non-existent. I hope that the liberals realize you're not likely to win this particular engagement. And it's not because Trump stacked the cord, it's not because evil right-wingers, it's because the situation, if you actually read the decision of Roe v. Wade, and we're assuming that it's upheld, isn't countermanded by the Mississippi law. You can disagree with it on a moral or a pragmatic basis. I can make that argument myself. But it doesn't violate Roe v. Wade. So where's the legal case? Big problem. So, the legacy media, link in the description again, is now querying the legitimacy of the Supreme Court. Well, the legitimacy of the Supreme Court as a democratic edifice, which it's specifically not. I can explain the foundational principles of the structure of the U.S. government. The only democracy component's the House of Representatives. The Senate initially was more like an imperial system, in that bicameral sense. The judiciary is quasi-oligarchic. And then the chief executives like a Roman consul, or is it basically? Like a limited literal commander-in-chief, almost like a watered-down, constitutionally shackled dictator. You took components of government that worked, watered them down and limited them more, mashed them together and gave them a constitution. That was what our drunken founding fathers dreamed up. By the way, the system doesn't work that badly, but it requires a judiciary. Now, you can think of all sorts of reforms for the Supreme Court, some of which I'd be amenable to. I think it would be an interesting idea to have a rotating state-appointed system for the Supreme Court. That is, that the states, specifically the state legislatures, put forward the individual into the Supreme Court, and you rotate like on a 5-year basis state by state. So every year, one state's, the oldest justice, as far as when they were appointed, they get taken out, and then a new state gets cycled back in. And of course, if you admit a new state, then you have to deal them in at the end of the cycle, and you'd have a cyclical basis for doing this. You could base it on demographics, you could base it on state size, you could make it alphabetical if you wanted. It wouldn't need to be 9, you could have 11. It wouldn't really make any difference. But right now, that's not the system we have. We have a system where person gets in, They're in for life till they die or resign, or are forced out through incapacity. There is no question of their legitimacy. The fact that they would make a decision that you don't agree with, making them illegitimate, is something that I see people parrot all the time when the court makes a decision they don't like. So the right wing, when the court upholds, let's say they do uphold Roe v. Wade, people on the right will say, well, the Supreme Court's illegitimate. It's plain as day. Why didn't you strike it down? You're violating the Constitution. And the left will cheer the fact that Roe v. Wade maintained intact, and they'll say, well, they upheld the human rights today, the equal rights of women. Likewise, if they decide to dump it, right-wingers will say, well, the court made the right decision stripping that unconstitutional nonsense from the 70s. And people on the left, likewise, will respond in kind and say, no, the court is illegitimate because it reversed this age-old decision. This happens every time there's a hot-button decision. When concealed carry, the New York case, that's going to be decided in the same term. That'll probably be the runner-up to this case as far as how fiery it gets. I expect the Supreme Court to side with the plaintiffs and to extend shall issue and or, I would hope, constitutional carry to the whole United States because it's a no-brainer. If they side against that, I will be rankled because, of course, I would say any proper interpretation of the Constitution says that that firearm that you own does not end at your doorstep. That was clearly not the purpose because the militia can't muster unless they can leave their property with their weapons in time of conflict, if you have that system, which the Second Amendment provides. But I would be mad, but I wouldn't proclaim the court illegitimate. I would simply say to my mind they made the wrong decision. But a lot of people would consider them illegitimate for the decision they made. And likewise, when they, in my opinion, almost inevitably, do side with the gun rights, people on the left will say, no, this is terrible. It only happened because Trump stacked the court. Trump is the underpinning upon which all claims of illegitimacy of government officers and edifices has been based for years now by the American Democratic Party and by left-wing ideology. It always boils down to Orange Man bad, he was crazy and the less intelligent version of Adolf Hitler, and therefore anything that he did can't be legitimate. So his justices, even though properly and duly instituted by a vote by the Senate, even though they had the legal qualifications, the experience, everything else, even though a rigorous, and in Kavanaugh's case I think overly so, examination of their character, past decisions, etc., got them into that position, the mere fact that Trump put them forward in the first place, in the minds of these people, makes that illegitimate. So when SCOTUS almost inevitably sides with Mississippi, people on the left will be fighting mad, and I'm already seeing them saying, because they realize they're likely to lose, we need to pack the court. We need to expand the Supreme Court. We need to give Biden a couple of justices in order to offset the evil Drumpfler justices. We need to rebalance the court, which means we need to make it a liberal court. Well, I mean, it'll be too late by the end of this decision. By the end of this particular docket that they're working with, there will be a huge amount of potential political transformation in the United States, some in a direction I disagree with. I think that the court should side with the right of a woman to choose. Will it do that? I don't know. Then you set up for state and federal court battles. It will get messy. I think probably they'll side with gun rights in the New York case, which is something that I agree with. The court is perfectly legitimate in its meanderings, and of course you can always look forward to the future when a potential case that you don't like gets overturned. Much like people who don't like Roe v. Wade are chomping at the bit right now. It's an interesting time, though, when you have the legacy media by and large questioning the legitimacy of part of the U.S. government. It was incepted by the founders for a reason, simply because of a decision that they haven't even made yet. I find that astonishing that people actually take them seriously. That's about all. Peace out.